this
morning.
conference will now be recorded.
We will start with introductions from the group this morning and then move into some open science updates and then a couple of presentations. And then we'll follow up with a brief discussion item. So we'll go ahead and start with introductions. I'm Megan Schrantz and I'm with the FWRI FIM group. And I think the best option here is just to kind of run down the attendees list in the go-to meeting. But I know that organizers and presenters show up first. So if you guys want to start that route, then we can just run through alphabetically.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Marcus Beck. I am the other co-chair of the Open Science Subcommittee. I'm the program scientist for the Tampa Bay Estuary program.
I'm Maya Burke. I'm the assistant director for the Estuary program.
Matt Sherwood, director of the Tampa Bay Estuary program, lurking in the background.
I guess I'll go. Sorry. Hi, I'm Sarah Schaefer. I'm the program coordinator for Peconic Estuary Partnership.
All right, Ben, I've got you up next on the list.
Okay, cool. My name is Ben Best, and I'm at EcoQuants, and work with Tyler on the infographic stuff that we'll present later, and was previously briefly involved with spinning up some of these open science tools with Tampa Bay.
Carrie Lopez.
Hi, Carrie Lopez. I'm with FWRI and I'm in the HAP group there.
Thank you. Chris Pratt.
Good morning, everyone. Chris Pratt. I'm with the Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County.
David.
Hi, Dave Carlin. I'm also with EPC of Hillsborough County.
Greg.
Hi, Greg Blanchard with Banty County Parks and Natural Resources.
And Jamie.
Good morning, Jamie Swindez, staff environmental scientist with the swim program at SwiftMud.
Juliet.
Hi, I'm Julie Christian with EPC and Tom Ash's group.
Mike McManus.
Hi, this is Mike McManus. I'm with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Research and Development.
And Mike Wessel.
Hi, Mike Wessel, Genetic Environmental.
Natasha.
Hi, Natasha DeCrow with Pinellas County Environmental Management. Good morning.
Morning. Paul.
Good morning, Paul Julian with Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation.
And Tyler.
Good morning, I'm Tyler Murray. I'm a systems and software engineer at the University of South Florida, working with the Institute of Marine Remote Sensing.
Thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. And we will pass it off to Marcus for open science updates by TVEP and their partners.
All right. Good to see everybody online today. I think we have some really cool talks today, so I don't want to monopolize too much of the time giving these updates, but we do have some kind of exciting things to talk about today with what we've been doing as a program in the last 3 months since we had this the subcommittee meeting. So I wanted to give you an update on that. I also like to start with a reminder of what we do, why we're here, and why we have these meetings. We convened this Open Science Subcommittee about a year ago now as a part of the Tampa Bay Technical Advisory Committee. So we're inviting everybody from our TAC to be part of this, but of course this is an open invite to anyone that is interested in open science, not just regionally, but in the state of Florida as a whole. So we welcome anybody here to have discussions about what open science can do as an organization, as well as just for facilitating research in applied science in general. So our guiding document kind of describes the roles and responsibilities of TBEP, the members of the subcommittee, and anyone else who wants to be involved, you can check that out and review that if you like. But generally, it's focused around 3 basic activities. First and foremost, we want to support development of open science products at TBEP. That's our main goal. So we sort of showcase our open science products to this group so we can vet them to the broader community to make sure that we're doing things that are helpful for you all. We're also hoping to use this subcommittee to help us rank priority research areas for developing open science products. So far, we've just been developing products that have really revolved around technical things that have already been produced. So like our water quality report card is something that we've been using for a long time. We've developed open science products around that to facilitate or improve how those reporting products are created in a more timely and efficient and reproducible manner. But moving forward, there's likely going to be some new products being created in the future, and we want to make sure that we're hitting those things that are prioritized among the members of this group to make sure that we're addressing the needs of our partners. And then finally, we're using this group to facilitate training activities. So we've had a couple of training activities in the past, mostly focused on different tools or skill sets that you might want to develop in the open science toolbox. And we've had some last year. We had an art training in June last year. And then we just had one recently, another art training that I'll talk about in a second, as a way to continue building those skills. And we'll have some training activities in the future focused more generally on open science. And we want to make sure that this group is not only aware of those training activities, but also can help us, again, prioritize what those training activities might be so we can make sure that everybody has relevant skill sets moving forward to make the best use of these tools. So that's what we are doing in this subcommittee. Again, just a reminder, I know I've said this before in the past, but I just want to start with that. The first announcement I have is our data management SOP. I introduced this at our last meeting as something that we as a program are thinking about as a document that can be sort of our guidance document for how we think about managing data as an organization. When I talked about this last time, I had really just done like the first section, but now it's complete. It's now a full drafted document, but as per usual, this is just something that we've created, and now we want to bring it out to you guys to make sure that you guys have the chance to review it and understand what we're trying to do with this document. So my reasoning for bringing this up to you today is not just to make you aware that we've drafted this, but again, to make an open invite for you all to review this information. Just to orient you guys to what this document is trying to do, this basically has 3 general goals. First and foremost, we want to use this document to communicate our internal process for managing data within the Estuary program. We've talked a lot about open science over the last year, what we're doing with it, but I see this document as our official place to where we can put this down on paper in terms of what we're trying to do. All of these, the metaphors I talk about the open science cake, the workflows that we're describing, it's all in this document now and sort of plain language descriptions to sort of make you aware of what we're doing with open science. So it's not just a way to get those things down on paper internally for what we do, but we also want this document to be a roadmap for other organizations to think about how you can begin to manage your data. So it's meant to be a motivating example to describe what we're doing, but also maybe describe some tools that others could think about adopting within their own institutions for managing data. So we do have kind of a roadmap there for describing that. And we third, hope that it's meant to motivate you all to bring open science within your organization. So we talk about, open science champions as individuals that sort of advocate for open science within their own organizations. And so we're hoping that this document can motivate you to become a champion in your own right. There's a couple of different sections in this document. These are the main ones. We talk about overview of general and specific topics around data management that we think are important to know, at least in the context of how we're managing data. And then we provide an explanation of how we're doing this within TBEP, and also provide that roadmap for how you can do that at your own organization. And then we had some examples at the end that are some sort of case studies that show how this is done in practice, to sort of use the examples in the document to show how we're actually implementing them in the wild. So that's just it. You can go to the website here, review the document. This is all online. This is done in a book down, which is a package for creating HTML style books online. So it's all quite accessible this way. So if you want to contribute to this document, I talked about, we're kind of making an open call for folks to review this information. It is, there's quite a bit of material here, so by all means don't feel obligated to review this if you don't have time, but I'll welcome any feedback you do have at this point. But there's a couple ways you can give me this feedback. Being that this is an online document and that we are channeling the ethos of open science, we want to make this document a living document. So if you go to the overview page here, there's a section here at the very beginning here that tells a couple steps or a couple ways you can contribute to this. The easiest way is basically, all these points walk you through this, but the easiest way is you can go up here and click this little icon up here, this little editing button, and it'll take you to the GitHub page where the source document lives for this. And this is where you can actually go in and make changes to the actual text. This does require some level of familiarity with using Git and GitHub, but if you need help with that, reach out to me and I could sort of walk you through that if you need that. But if you are using Git already or GitHub already, this should be pretty straightforward. The other option is you can actually just literally download a PDF from this button up here. So up here you can download a PDF. The formatting still needs a bit of work, but this would be more like the actual text document you might be more familiar with for reading like an actual book or a paper. So you can read this PDF and send me comments, markup comments in there as well, or you can just email me anytime and say, hey, this is what I think about it, and I could, try to incorporate the compliment or your comments that way. So again, this is kind of a largest document that represents an effort over the last couple of months to try to put down our thoughts of data management and how we're approaching it at TBEP onto paper, and to serve as a motivating example for others to think about how data management can work. And being that right there, it's kind of it's rough. It's a draft at this point. We're hoping to get everyone's feedback, and again, we'll welcome any comments you have at this point of what you think about it as a whole, or just more specific parts of the document. We'll take anything you have at this point. The other announcement I want to make is obviously, we've been dealing with Piney Point issues over the last couple of weeks. This has really consumed the time of not just all the staff members at TBEP, but others that are very active in working to respond to these changes that we've seen in the Bay so far. And so as part of this effort, there's been a lot going on, but we have, if you haven't seen it so far, we've developed a dashboard. You all, as part of this subcommittee, are familiar with how we use dashboards at the Estuary program, but this is our newest dashboard that's meant to synthesize and display the water quality data as well as other data we've got about Piney Point in a timely fashion in a way that makes sense. And so given that this is a really important component of open science, how we can use dashboards to communicate data to decision makers, I wanted to present this to you all to again give you the chance of looking at this dashboard and providing feedback on is this an appropriate format for displaying this information? Are there improvements we can make to it? Is it delivering what we think it can deliver? And just sort of thinking of this as a living dashboard, again, that you all can review and provide feedback on. So if you haven't had a chance to look at this, by all means, have a look at the dashboard. Let us know how you think it looks. And Maya's got a question there or comment.
Yeah, I wanted to encourage everyone to sort of model the ethos that we're talking about I think right now Marcus is getting a lot of feedback via email or verbally at coordination meetings, but all the code is served up on Git, and so you can create issues or make suggestions on there. And I think if people start to see more chatter and understand how to use Git in that way, I think that would be really helpful. So I kind of view this as an opportunity for this group to like I said, model that behavior. And if you hear your peers talking about it or whatever, you can always recommend that they provide feedback in that way too.
Exactly. Yeah, so this, I mean, there's a lot to say about how this dashboard was developed, how we're pulling in the data and compiling it and all that. But you all, since you are familiar with this broader ethos we're trying to instill with open science, you can sort of model that behavior and show others that this is sort of how we're doing open science. So this is the dashboard here. As always, there's a link to the source code. So if you do have comments, you can go to the GitHub repository and go to the Issues tab and create something there to say, hey, I really like this part, but maybe you could, change it this way or whatever. So that's one way to do it.
And so just so you all know, like a couple of the things that Marcus is working on is, when he first built the dashboard, he's comparing baselines of historic data to a very few sites over a really narrow time period. And now that we're sort of extending the number of months we're looking at and expanding the geographic scope, we're gonna have to work on changing some of that. And so if you have feedback on some of that, that would be helpful in sort of advancing the dashboard. The other pieces that have just sort of been placeholders at this point is some of the more ecological data. Like we know that we're going to be building in more of the information about seagrass resources, but we also, haven't had a chance to build out anything with respect to like fisheries. And we know that there's good baseline that we could pull there and bring that in, and that there's, potentially some ongoing monitoring that's tied to sort of more event response base that can get built into this. So if you're familiar with those data sets or something that could get built to make the way that we're characterizing the ecological response, more robust, I think we would really value and appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, so this is something, again, we've been working on for the last few weeks, and we are updating it almost every day with information, as well as how we're presenting the information. So again, the point that Maya made is important because we're trying to assimilate information that describes a lot of different components of the ecosystem, and how do we do that in a way that makes sense? I mean, first and foremost, we know that this wastewater is heavy in nutrients, and so we're looking at water chemistry as the main response, but trying to link that to other components like algal community response, benthic response, Nectin response, seagrass response. How do we link those pieces together in a meaningful way to sort of rapidly convey how the system could be changing, and also how that could form management response to these changes as well. So it's built out in a lot of ways already, but again, there's placeholders, like for example, benthic surveys. We just have some points where we've sampled but no data yet. And how do we link these pieces together in a meaningful way? So we'll take any feedback you have there. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was with training efforts. I think I mentioned this last meeting. This is an art training event that actually was just completed last month. And this is something that was we put on that was part of a project that is an NSF funded project that I'm collaborating on with colleagues at Penn State. And it's kind of a topical project looking at how we can use continuous water quality data to estimate ecosystem metabolism. So if you don't have any interest in ecosystem metabolism, you might find this training slightly inaccessible, but it does hit on a lot of general R topics or best practices for working with water quality data, particularly from continuously collected monitoring data. So as per usual, we have a website with this training material. These are actually put together in 4 separate sessions, each 2 weeks apart. So each session is only about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And there's a recording for each one. So you can listen to me prattle on about R for a couple hours if you have time to spare. But again, this is, you know, if you want to brush up on R basics, this would be a good place to start. We put this on as a way to, you know, think about how people might be using R for the first time and sort of get them up to that speed of just using R just to execute functions, work with basic data sets, and then transition to how to use some of the packages that we've already developed for this project to estimate metabolism. So the deeper you get into the training, the more topical it gets, but this is all online if you want to explore that as an alternative to brush up on your R skills. Yeah, and that's all I have for announcements. Any questions about any of that before we get on to our speakers? No? All right. Megan, you want to introduce Sarah, or I guess I could do it
If you'd like to introduce Sarah, go for it.
All right. Well, I guess I'll do it because I'm familiar with this project and I invited Sarah, so that makes sense. Let me first of all, let me see if can you share your screen, Sarah? Or do I need to make you a presenter? I think I need to make you a presenter. Hold on. Let me add you here. So I'll just say a few things about Sarah and the work that she's doing at the Peconic Estuary Partnership. One of the reasons I invited her to speak today is we started, the Tampa Bay Estuary Program started working with PEP, gosh, at least 6 months ago because, and she'll tell you all about this, but they have started developing their water monitoring program, and they needed some tools to quickly synthesize and report on water quality data that they have for the Peconic Estuary. And they were aware of some of the work that we've been doing in Tampa with open source tools, and we basically got in the discussion of how we can transfer those tools to the data sets that they have up there. So I think this is an excellent example of tech transfer and a demonstration of the value of open science is just making the tools more open and efficient and sort of transferring this information without having to reinvent the wheels each time. So I'll leave it at that, and Sarah, take it away.
Thank you, Marcus. So can everybody see my PowerPoint presentation? Yeah, okay. You don't see like a box for the GoToMeeting, do you? Okay,
no.
Good. Okay. All right, so good morning, everybody. Thank you, Marcus, for the introduction. Again, my name is Sarah Schaefer, and I'm the program coordinator for the Peconic Estuary Partnership. And I'm very happy to be here today presenting to the Open Science Subcommittee. And I'm going to be presenting just about how the Peconic Estuary Partnership developed reporting tools using open science for water quality management in the Peconic Estuary watershed. So today I'm just going to be providing a brief overview of PEP's water quality monitoring strategy development, our water quality analysis and reporting using open science, and then our next steps. So just a little background, like Tampa Bay Estuary Program, the Peconic Estuary is a national estuary program. We're funded by the US EPA, and we act as a backbone organization to bring together partners from different sectors around common goals. And the Peconic Estuary study area lies between the north and south forks of Long Island, which is about 80 miles east of New York City on the eastern end of Suffolk County on Long Island. And the watershed begins on the headwaters of the Peconic River and spans the several bays and tributaries out east through Block Island Sound between Plum Island and Montauk Point. And the study area consists of more than 100 distinct bays, harbors, embayments, and tributaries. And while the Peconic Estuary does not exhibit some of the widespread problems found in many highly urbanized and industrial areas, and maybe more western Long Island and New York City, we do have suburban sprawl that's expanded farther east, and human pressure on the Peconic Estuary has continued to grow. And this increased pressure and the accompanied land use changes have affected the estuary in several ways. And we have, degraded water quality and habitat loss and fragmentation, most notably excess nutrient loading from land, septic systems and cesspools causes water quality to decline. We have climate change causing sea levels to rise, and all of these combined issues, along with other human activities, are harming our wildlife and habitats in the watershed. So PEP launched our revised Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan, or CCMP, in the fall of 2020. And it outlines 4 main goals, 8 objectives, and 35 actions that guide the partnership to address challenges that our estuary is still facing. And those 4 main goals are strong partnerships and engagement, resilient communities prepared for climate change, clean waters for ecosystem health and safe recreation, and healthy ecosystems with abundant, diverse wildlife. And during the time PEP was finalizing the revision to our CCMP, we started the process of completing a water quality monitoring assessment with the assistance of coastwise partners, so Gerald Morrison and Holly Greening. And this process involved reviewing the water quality monitoring programs and developing a strategy that would be in alignment with the fresh new objectives, actions, and performance measures outlined in the CCMP document. And the goal of this project was to create a Peconic Estuary monitoring strategy that would be relevant for all decision makers and develop appropriate indicators for estuarine health and ensure appropriate water quality parameters are collected on a temporal and spatial scale to assess these indicators and really be able to allow us to track our progress on the CCMP. So we held multiple workshops with coastwise partners, with our technical advisory committee and all of the main water quality monitoring program representatives. And we discussed monitoring gaps, the new CCMP goals, and developed strategies to improve monitoring programs and reporting to better track progress in relation to CCMP implementation. So finally, in May of 2020, the Peconic Estuary Partnership and our TAC recommended approval of the Peconic Estuary Water Quality Monitoring Strategy, and the Management Committee and Policy Committee approved the document in June of 2020. And as of a few weeks ago, the strategy is actually finalized, available on our website, and formally approved by the EPA and incorporated as a required component of our CCMP. And this document is going to allow us to assess progress towards CCMP goals, with the end goal of producing annual water quality reports for the watershed. And the strategy document also includes next steps to address gaps in data and information needed to fully assess progress towards CCMP goals. So as part of the strategy finalization, the Technical Advisory Committee and the Management Conference made several decisions and recommendations to take the first steps to annual water quality analysis and reporting. And we adopted targets for water clarity, or SECI-DIS depth, chlorophyll A, and dissolved oxygen, which are listed on this slide here, which were also proposed in a county subwatershed wastewater management plan called the Suffolk County 2020 Subwatersheds Wastewater Management Plan. Just for some context, the Subwatersheds Wastewater Plan is a county-wide plan developed in parallel to our water quality monitoring strategy development, and it provides parcel-specific blueprint for reducing nitrogen pollution through wastewater upgrades, septic system and cesspool upgrades, and other mitigation strategies. So this was a very suitable document to develop our preliminary targets for the Peconic Estuary. And then we also developed 3 estuary segments within the Peconic Estuary watershed, a western, central, and eastern, illustrated in this map on the slide here. And the 3 segments are, they were based on chlorophyll A concentrations and Cepheid steps observed at Suffolk County Department of Health Services monitoring stations in each of the 3 segments in the estuary. And then those kind of preliminary segmentations were then adjusted to be more in alignment with the New York State priority water bodies list boundaries. So these 3 segments are how we are tracking progress within our estuary right now. We have just the eastern, central, and western segment, and we're reporting on water quality in each of those segments at this time. And just to note that Suffolk County Department of Health Services does have the most robust surface water quality monitoring program in our watershed, and the monitoring stations are indicated in the orange circles on this slide. And then we also have 2 continuous USGS water quality monitoring stations. One is in the western estuary and one is in the eastern estuary. So the committee decided additionally as an initial target for pathogens that we would adopt Enterococcus thresholds currently used by the county and the state to determine estuarine and marine swimming beach closures. So the Enterococcus counts at estuarine and marine swimming beaches should not exceed 104 coliform forming units per 100 milliliter water sample. And currently there are new Enterococcus standards in review by the state and the EPA. But once those standards are in place, we'll revise our target accordingly and use that new target in our reporting going forward. So we also decided that we would track and report water quality, salinity, pH, and harmful algal blooms in the Peconic Estuary on an annual basis. Although we have not at this point adopted any numerical targets for these parameters. And we also set a goal of reporting on an annual basis and updating reports annually as shown as soon as monitoring data are available from the previous year. And finally, we agreed to use stoplight graphics to provide easy to understand metrics on whether we're meeting our goals for public facing documents. So you'll see later a green, red, and yellow stoplight graphic cell will be used to inform whether we're meeting our target for that estuary segment, for that parameter, and inform management action. So as I stated earlier, our Peconic Estuary Partnership Water Quality Monitoring Strategy included a summary of the approved next steps by year for 2020 through 2023 to facilitate tracking and planning. And the PEP decided to develop a Peconic Estuary Monitoring Collaborative, which I'm chairing to help advise the completion of next steps outlined in the strategy document. And the collaborative will function as a subcommittee of our technical advisory committee, and it's composed of the main water quality monitoring programs in the estuary, members from the New York State DEC, the USGS, Suffolk County, our Cornell Cooperative Extension partners, and various other academia monitoring programs in our watershed. And a goal for 2020 was to use open science tools to track and report progress towards water quality goals, to bridge the divide between scientific products and management needs, and specifically to evaluate the use of the Peconic R-based tools to analyze and report annual water quality data. And just for some context, in the Peconic estuary, there's been a long-sustaining issue of numerous water quality monitoring programs. The data has been collected in our watershed, and it's not really being easily accessible or analyzed or reported in a easy to understand way for decision makers and resource managers to use in a timely fashion. And we believe that these open science tools will help us provide our resource managers the tools to be able to understand the data and also be able to develop management action based on that data. So through the process of developing the water quality monitoring strategy, Gerald and Holly had been in contact with Marcus Beck from the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. And as you know, Tampa Bay has been working to develop open science methods and transfer this knowledge throughout the National Estuary Program Network, as Marcus was describing earlier. So to encourage the use of open science methods throughout the National Estuary Programs, the Tampa Bay Estuary Program offered to develop an open science package using the Suffolk County Surface Water Quality Database as a foundation. And this R package using the statistical program R is capable of providing almost real-time analysis and graphics, including those stoplight graphics, which I mentioned earlier. And the open science methods can more easily bridge the gap between scientific products and management, and reduce the information content loss over time due to transfer of knowledge and or a specific person leaving a position or an organization. And I'm sure you're all aware that Tampa Bay uses these open science tools to analyze data on a regular basis and develop reporting. And that Tampa Bay Estuary Program R Tools package is available on their GitHub site. So our group, the collaborative, we were all shown the benefits and the advantages of moving away from the old way of analyzing data and producing reports and moving forward towards using open science tools to analyze this data and make the data more available, accessible, shareable, and easily updated. So the tech transfer really involved Tampa Bay using their previously developed R Tools package and developing the foundation for the PEP Tools R package that the Peconic Estuary Partnership could use. And we integrated our long-term water quality monitoring data set collected by the county. And we also incorporated the USGS continuous water quality monitoring data that's collected in the watershed as well. And that tool is now available on our GitHub site, hosted within the Tampa Bay Estuary Program GitHub site. So we're really thankful that that information is accessible, available. We've had trainings from Marcus on how to use the R tools, and he's been a tremendous help in us being able to move forward with moving away from the old way of managing data and reporting and moving towards the future. So this PEP Tools package is able to import raw data and estimate indicators and report outcomes. It provides a foundational method for indicator reporting. It's a freely available resource on GitHub for anyone to view the source code, download it for use, and also, make additions or recommendations on that GitHub site. And the PEP Tools package is also available for us to be able to fully train our monitoring collaborative to use it. As I said earlier, Marcus did a training for us on the R tools. So we'll be able to build a network of practitioners within this monitoring collaborative to continue the momentum that we've started here in the foundational establishment of the R tools. And we're hoping to use this method going forward to streamline how we're reporting on data and analyzing our data in our watershed. So the TAC and our management conference approved the use of these R tools package, and we're going to be going forward with the R tools package to create graphs and figures from existing water quality data sets and analyze spatial divisions and segments and application of targets in the estuary. And we're also going to use the R tools to develop stoplight graphics for public-facing documents, which will be updated annually. And we just completed the development of our first annual water quality report that was produced finally in April of 2021. So this stoplight graphic is really useful because it is a way that we can clearly report on water quality targets and summarize our attainment for those water quality targets in 3 major management areas of the Peconic Estuary. The green, yellow, and red colors indicate an action to be taken by our Peconic Estuary Partnership Technical Advisory Committee and our management conference to address the issue. And so now I'm just going to go into a little bit about the different parameters that we've been analyzing and reporting on, and how exactly that was done. So as you guys know, increased algae blooms correlate with higher chlorophyll A levels and lower water clarity, leading to lower light availability. And to show you just how some of the information is displayed in the stoplight graphics, here are some of the resulting graphics for the water clarity and chlorophyll A targets, which we decided to assess together to track towards water quality goals. And the targets were based on annual median values observed during April 1st through October 31st growing season. And the median and its 95% upper and lower confidence interval values were calculated for each PEP estuary segment, zone, and year. So for chlorophyll A, if all 3 values do not exceed the target, the stoplight graphic cell is green for that year in estuary segment. And if all 3 values exceeded the target, the cell is red. And for Secchi disk or water clarity, we use those same rules to get those red or green cells. And since algal blooms and higher chlorophyll A levels and lower water clarity lead to lower light availability, we decided that the duration and magnitude of each of the exceedance of water clarity and chlorophyll A targets should be assessed together to track progress towards water quality goals. So water clarity and Secchi disk depth median values during the growing season at all of those Suffolk County Department of Health Services stations were averaged within the estuary segment, and an outcome integer from 0 to 3 was assigned to each estuary segment for each annual estimate of chlorophyll A and Secchi depths. And these outcomes are based on both the exceedance of the annual estimate above the threshold and duration of the exceedance of the threshold for the years prior. And the following graphics on the slide describe this process a little further. So the final stoplight graphic created reflects the combined outcomes for chlorophyll A and Secchi disk depth together. And to be able to track those parameters together provides us with the framework for how we can develop management actions for our estuary segments and the estuary as a whole. And it's really a great tool, I think, for us to be able to use this data in order to inform management actions. So on this slide, you can just see a little further how each of the chlorophyll A measurements and Secchi disk measurements in each western, central, and eastern segment were used to develop that combined stoplight graphic for Secchi disk depth and chlorophyll A. And on the right, you can see the resulting graphic that we're using in our water quality monitoring reporting for resource managers and our partners to be able to understand what's going on in our estuary, where the western, central, and eastern segment are all represented, and then we have a summary of whether those segments are meeting our water quality targets for both chlorophyll A and Secchi disk in 2010 through 2020. So we also have dissolved oxygen concentrations that are measured every 6 minutes at 2 USGS continuous water quality monitoring stations in the Peconic estuary, as I mentioned earlier. Those 2 locations on that main map, the green triangles. So we have one in the eastern estuary and one in the western estuary. And we analyzed that data against the targets for dissolved oxygen that we set. So those targets are that the DO should comply with the New York State acute never less than 3 milligrams per liter, and a chronic target of never greater than 4.8 milligrams per liter as a daily average in 90% of the measurements. So the data was the data collected at these 2 sites was summarized and analyzed relative to that 4.8 milligram per liter target. So within the R package, the average DO concentration for each day is calculated, and a 1 meaning yes and a 0 meaning no is assigned to each day based on if the concentration was below the threshold value at any point during a day. And additionally, the R package calculates a cumulative tally of the number of days in each month at which DO fell below the threshold at any point during a day. And this data is then summarized by month to be illustrated in the stoplight graphics. So additionally, the R package calculates the average of all daily DO averages across the month, the proportion of days in a month when concentrations in a given day fell below the threshold, and the maximum number of sequential days in a month when concentrations in a given day fell below the threshold. For instance, 30 or 31, depending on the month, would indicate all days in a month had an instance of DO below the threshold. So because we might want to summarize this data differently, depending on how we want to analyze hypoxia and anoxia conditions, we've been able to develop two methods of reporting this DO data, which I think are useful in varying situations, depending on how you want to analyze the impact on the biological resource. So you can see on this graph here, the stoplight graphic of maximum sequential days monthly below DO concentration target of 4.8 milligrams per liter at USGS stations in the Peconic River, which is that western station, Orient Harbor, which is that eastern station from 2013 to 2020. And the graphic reflects the sequential number of days within a 24-hour mean measurement below 4.8 milligrams per liter. And alternately, the stoplight graphic here shows the proportion of days in a month when concentrations in a given day fell below a threshold of 4.8 milligrams per liter at those two Peconic estuary stations for 2013 to 2020. Okay. So we also reported on pathogens in our water quality monitoring reporting. So to provide information on the potential presence of pathogens in public swimming areas that may be impacted by contamination, the Suffolk County Department of Services conducts a comprehensive bathing beach water quality monitoring program from May through September each year. And to report on pathogens, we use Enterococcus bacteria, which is a type of fecal indicator bacteria that is monitored at those Suffolk County bathing beaches in the Peconic Estuary. And just a reminder, the Peconic Estuary target for pathogens is Enterococcus counts at estuarine and marine swimming beaches that should not exceed 104 coliform forming units per 100 milliliter water sample. So the estimated exposure risk was analyzed by counting the number of instances in a year when the concentrations at a beach exceeded the threshold for each 24-hour period in the data set. And the result is an annual reporting matrix here for the relative risk of pathogen exposure at the 28 bathing beaches in the Peconic Estuary. And so tracking the number of exceedances of bacterial concentrations provides a framework for identifying locations that may need management actions to remediate potential public health issues. So as you can see, we are not using the red, yellow, green stoplight graphic for this pathogen reporting. It was pointed out to us by our monitoring collaborative that using that red, yellow, green color scheme might present some misunderstandings from the public about the safety of using those bathing beaches for swimming. Because, having, 2 or 3 exceedances of 104 coliform forming units doesn't mean that beach is not a usable beach. It may just mean that there's a higher risk of pathogen exposure. So we decided to instead use a more neutral color scheme, a more sliding scale scheme here to still portray that same information, but maybe not cause so much concern in the public perception. So relatively to the rest of the county, the Peconic Estuary actually has very clean beaches. So only 6 of the 28 bathing beaches in the Peconic Estuary in 2020 had exceedances over 104 coliform forming units. And so, really generally, our beaches are very clean. We did want to get that point across as well. And we provided that context in our reporting as to not raise any, concerns from the public that may not be really needed. So this is the resulting report, and I'll just go through this quickly because I spoke about this mostly in the rest of the presentation. It is available on our website. We did present this at our PEP biennial conference in April for the first time, and it's the first annual report on the status of our water for the Peconic Estuary Partnership, and we're really proud to share it. So this report is a brief 4-page document that provides a snapshot of Peconic Estuary water quality in 2020. And we, again, are using this document to track our progress on meeting our CCMP goals. So on the first page is an outline of whether I'm meeting our targets for water clarity, chlorophyll A, and dissolved oxygen and pathogens, and more information on exactly what data sources, how these data are analyzed, are all linked within this document. And there's more information on our website where you can learn a little bit more about the data behind all of the analysis and the methodology in the R tools that we're using to produce this report. So on the second page, there's water clarity and chlorophyll A summarized in that combined stoplight graphic that I spoke about earlier. Dissolved oxygen, we decided to focus on the max sequential days in a month below the DO concentration for this report, but that other stoplight graphic for proportion of the day of the month exceeding that DO concentration is also available on our website if somebody wants to use that. And here's our pathogen page. And lastly, we do have a last page here that identifies our harmful algal bloom risks. So we don't have numerical targets for this parameter, but our partners with Stony Brook University and the Nature Conservancy annually produce this Peconic estuary water quality impairments map that we were able to incorporate into this report to provide that data to the public as well. So we're very thankful for their contributions to this report as well. So this was a lot of work, a lot of collaboration from our partners to be able to provide this data and approve how this data was reported on for the Peconic estuary. And we'll be working over the next year to produce the 2021 report, which will be available in spring of 2022. So just to summarize, we will be using this tool to track progress towards CCP goals and inform management efforts for 2020 and 2021 and beyond. And annual water quality reports, as I said, will be produced in the spring of every year. And going forward through 2021, we'll be able to refine targets for each estuary segment and explore a tiered reporting system for main stem and embayments and subwatersheds. We'll be able to go forward with potentially investigating methods to increase locations of continuous dissolved oxygen sampling throughout the estuary, and potentially expanding our nutrient concentration monitoring along the Peconic River. And we'll be looking to integrate reporting and analysis with county initiatives and other nutrient pathogen management habitat restoration programs. And I just want to note this PEP tools package is invaluable to efficiently track status of water quality and the actions that PEP and our partners should make in this watershed. And we're excited to continue the great work that's been started. So I just wanted to thank you all for the time, and let me know if you have any questions. My contact information is here on this page.
Any questions for Sarah?
You do have some in the chat.
Yeah, I did just type in there. So yeah, I'm curious about where the reports are published. Is it like on a website, or is there a PDF, or is it just internal? Maybe I missed that.
Yeah, we have it on our website right now. I can provide the link in the chat for you guys to check it out. And you know, we don't have it printed or anything like that yet, but you know, all that information is available on our website and completely accessible to anybody who wants to review it.
Yeah, a link would be great. I didn't see it. I looked really briefly, but didn't look very hard. Thank you.
I just am encouraged to hear how different management conferences deal with the issues about how to represent risk associated with fecal coliform data. It's something that we struggle with down here too. So I appreciated hearing some of that discourse that happened within your management conference for sure.
Yeah, we kind of didn't originally think that people would have such a strong opinion about how the information was represented. But we, in speaking with Suffolk County and, a few of our water quality monitoring partners, we were able to understand that, representing that data in such a bleak red, yellow, green stoplight graphic might cause some concern from the public. And we did not want to discourage people from using our, bathing beaches as a resource, as a recreational resource, because maybe they saw it was red or, yellow. When in comparison, our Peconic estuary beaches are actually very clean compared to the rest of the county bathing beaches, which, we did want to make sure we were presenting the information that wouldn't discourage recreational use and some misunderstanding from the public.
Yeah, as a social scientist, I appreciate what open science does to sort of like force those conversations to think about how people will use and interpret data. So I think it's really interesting to hear about others seeing that. I wonder, I was kind of surprised about it looks like you're reporting an annual number for fecal, like you're giving, like kind of like we do for other things. And for us, there's such a strong seasonal component to our water quality. That's something that I would keep in mind. I don't know if you deal with similar challenges with seasonality or not.
Yeah, we definitely, just wanted to present it, within the seasonal period when people would be using that resource. So, we're just presenting it annually, but within the same context, we're providing that. I think it was a 10-year time frame when we were providing the Enterococcus exceedances within the Peconic estuary bathing beaches. So this is a comparison as well.
Well, I want to make sure that Tyler and Ben have enough time to present their work. But thank you so much, Sarah, for presenting on that. It's always good to hear how you guys are using the tools. The one last point I want to make about it is, again, this is not just an excellent example of tech transfer from some of the open science tools that we've developed in Tampa, but a point that Sarah made was that we've tried to really emphasize how people can continue to use these tools and empower them to do so through just training and making sure people are comfortable to use the tools that are developed, because that's a really big part of how open science can have a much broader reach of, not just making the tool, but making sure people can use it. And so we have to spend a lot of time to make sure that, once it's developed, it's in able hands, that they can continue to use it in the future without having to relearn every time. So that was an important point there. Tyler, you good to go?
Yeah, I think so.
Make a presenter page.
Yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen here.
So we, just before you get started, we invited Tyler and Ben to present because one, I'm not really super familiar with what you guys are doing, so this is kind of an educational thing for us. But based on the graphics that I've seen that you guys produce, I think you guys are kind of at the bleeding edge of how open science can be used to communicate this information. So I'm excited to hear about this, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but I'll let you talk about some of the cool stuff you're doing.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm excited to talk about it, and especially in the context of that last talk, I feel like we're kind of all working to work on solve similar problems. So that's always encouraging to see, especially with the open science stuff, so we can all share and build on each other's stuff. It's great. Is my presentation showing up okay? We got full screen here. Looks good?
It looks good.
Okay, good. So yeah, today I'm going to be presenting on evergreen science communication with Infographic. This is it originally started as an R package that Ben developed primarily, and I helped a little bit. And then we've kind of pivoted a little bit and made it a little bit more generic using JavaScript, and made it so that it can be embedded and lots of fun things like that. This has all been in connection with the Marine Biodiversity Observation Network. Recently, Jai joined on and has been working a lot on improving things. So yeah, let's jump into it. I'll try not to take too much time here. So the motivation for all of this is basically reporting on ecological condition. And our two driving user groups were this integrated ecosystem assessment group and their ecosystem status reports, which is an annual report of their ecosystem status based on some key indicators. And then the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries has a similar report called the condition reports, where they report on the condition of their indicators. So these are kind of similar problems that we were looking for a solution, and they were looking for something to present to the public to make things pretty. Instead of just having a PDF, you have a nice interactive website. So challenge number one, we want to communicate broadly to the stakeholders. We want to connect with the data and we want to make it interactive. We want kind of an infographic-like feel that's, it catches the eye and gets the public's attention. Challenge number two, the ever-changing conditions. If you're looking at a report, it can be stale. Sure, they're annually, you can update annually, but even then, sometimes you end up looking at an older report, and in theory, data is coming in more than just every year. I mean, we could automate this and make a workflow so that these are always up to date. And that's where the term evergreen, that's why I'm using that term here, is because these reports are designed to automatically publish updates as the data is streaming in and remain evergreen, so always up to date. So again, target users and project goals, just to be completely explicit here. Our library can be used by anyone with public data and a story to tell. These are our two user groups that drove development of this forward, but really it's a generic framework that lets you create a infographic from data and that's all. So you could use it for all kinds of things. So our target group has been resource managers, and I think we're going to continue to do that through the MBON program, but certainly it can be a generic thing that could have use beyond that. Our primary goals are to communicate to the stakeholders beyond just the researchers, to reach out to the public, to reach out to people who would be interested in an infographic but don't necessarily want to read a report. And then our other goal is to minimize the time from data collection to data presentation. In the bottom here, I've got a little representation of, you start with data collection and then there's all these steps. Usually they're manual steps, and we're trying to automate all of that. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of just present some examples so that we can see what this looks like and the kinds of things that you can do with Infographic. So first of all, we're showing a bit of an older one from the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary. You've got this infographic on the left. This is a screenshot of the website, and there's the main infographic, and you can hover over these graphical elements and they highlight, and then when you click on them, you get this pop-up. We call it a modal pop-up. And in this case, you click on the key climate and ocean drivers icon and you get a pop-up that shows this map with some data on it. That's sea surface temperature, and we've got some other data on there. So you can also put text in these modals. You can put tabs. Really, you can put anything you want in these modals. But one thing that we thought was really cool is to put maps in them. So yeah, you click on the silhouettes and you get a modal plot pop up with the indicator data for this particular indicator that you clicked on. So something else you can do, this is another view from the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuaries focusing on the rocky shore ecosystem. You can link the infographic icons to interactive time series maps. So instead of showing a map, you click on something. You could click on the icon. We also made this one so that you can click on the text there, and then it will highlight, and you can click on that if you don't want to find the icons to click on. And you can pop up a time series. These are generated with R, and and various packages. You can put whatever you want in them. Time series is a common one that people want to see in their reports. So this is showing the change of mussels over time. So we did that, and that was an R package that it worked pretty well, and we were able to deploy the websites on GitHub, no hosting charges or anything like that. It's all a static website. So it was real easy, all automated, so that was great. But we kind of ran into this thing where people wanted to embed these infographics in their existing websites. They don't want a separate infographic website. They'd like for an infographic to show up on their homepage or something like that. So in this case, the IEA website, I believe it was published with Drupal. And so mainly Ben and Jai set out to figure out how to get the infographics embedded on a website. And so in order to do this, there was a lot of technical challenges, but the short story is we did it. So it's on there, it's working. You now don't have to depend on R to do this. You can, of course, and you can build things in lots of different ways, but this is a raw JavaScript, HTML, CSS version that can be embedded anywhere. So that's even more useful, I think. I think people would be interested in embedding these things. So again, you've got another pop-up here. We click on this and we see SST anomalies. We've got these different maps. Basically, these modals can be anything you want. You can write them in HTML. You can write them in R Markdown. It's very technology agnostic in a way. We provide solutions and sort of a cookbook, but there's a lot of different things you could do. Another one to show off is this more recent IEA Florida Keys ESR infographic. So this is the ecosystem status reports from the Integrated Ecosystem Assessment Group of NOAA. And you can see we're just continuing to make incremental improvements. The graphics are a little better. The display is a little better. The website's a little snappier. But it's the same sort of thing. You click on an icon and you get a pop-up with any plot or text you want in it. So I have a live demo. All of these links on this page, you should be able to visit and check out the different ones. But I'm going to try and click on this one and see if we can do a little bit of a live demo. Did that switch over to the website when I clicked on it there? If not, let me know. So here I am on the website. We've got some stuff at the top. I'm actually going to zoom out a little so we can get the full thing in the screen. Here we go. So we can now make selections here to change how the infographic is going to be drawn. So right now you hover over the different icons. You can see they light up. We've got mangroves, we've got seagrass, we've got some icons, commercial fishing, total tourism value. So then I can click on one of these and we get this modal pop-up. Here we've got a nice map of mangrove shoreline extent and some text about it. We also have on the side here, this is where you hover and can see. So for instance, mangrove is probably under habitat. So there it is. Same one we just clicked on. I can click on it here and you get the same view. So yeah, we think that's pretty cool. More fun things, you can change the headers of these. So we can redraw this here. Now we've got these different colors that are showing up. And when you hover over things, they are colored based on what group they're in. So you can kind of see, oh, mangroves is a habitat. And there's different color schemes, which is fun. You know, however you want to change the colors, it's all pretty easy change. We've also got different ways of displaying the text list. You can set what color you want to, if you don't want to use a scheme, you just want them all to be red. And then there's some more explanatory text that will pop up. So yeah, this is just a neat demo of some of the functionality of this one that Jai built out. And I really liked this, you know, exploring the different ways you could display it as like a way to see what you might want to do if you're trying to build an infographic. So let me switch back over to my presentation here. There we go. So now I'm going to shift a little bit and talk about how it works, because the technology's, it looks cool, but if it's hard to use, that's not great. We put a lot of work into making this as easy to use as possible, and as friendly to non-technical users as possible. So everything you need here to get started, you need some art. So this is usually an SVG file. You can make this using a program like Inkscape or Adobe Illustrator, but if that's too much, you can use this just using Google Drawings. You can do this in your browser. You don't need anything installed. If you're familiar with Google Drive, it'll make a lot of sense to you. You need a table to describe how the icons in the drawing connect up to the modal pages. So this is usually a CSV. Ben has made some cool code that makes it so that you can put this CSV in Google Sheets. So you don't need to even worry about editing the file outside of Google Drive. It pulls and updates automatically. The most complicated part is going to be the modal, the web page that shows up when you click on the icon. And it can be as complicated or as simple as you want it to be. You can just put text there, and that's real easy. You can put images, you can put interactive figures, you can put anything you can code in HTML or R Markdown or however you want to build it. And then lastly, you have the actual data and images that go into the modals. So this, again, the data can go right in Google Sheets, and you can update it there, and it can be pulled directly into the modal, and it can update automatically. That's really cool to see happen in real time. And same thing with the images. If you have an image and then you update it, it updates as soon as you refresh the page. So how you can get involved or get started if you want to work with an infographic. Ben is hosting a training event. So I would visit this link here for the most up-to-date information, noaa.iea.github.io/r3train. So this is going to be a training on how to use these kinds of reporting tools and all of the different libraries that have been built out of this effort. And I think Ben will probably go into a lot of additional good background information on just how to use R, how to use GitHub, some of the coolest, latest things to do in R. I see he's got tidy, of course, in here and those kinds of things. He can speak on that more if you guys have more questions. He is here to answer them. And then contacts and links. You can email me, mail@tyler.info. There's Ben's email and Jai's email if you want to talk about R coding. That's not really my specialty. And then project links. This documentation, the best way to get to it is through this Infographic or Infographic.js. And then here's some more links to the example infographics that I showed. I think those are the same links as were mentioned previously, except for SanctSound, which I think has some different visualizations that are really cool to do with the visualization of sound data. So that's all I have for you today. Ready for questions now.
Hey, I just have a question, Tyler. Is the Infographic a free service, or is there a subscription use?
Oh yeah, it's all free and open source. Okay. It's all on GitHub. You don't need to pay for anything. Even to host your own website, you can do it using free static website hosts like GitHub or whatever you like. So there's not any cost except the cost of your time to develop it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. I really like this approach because it's just something that I often struggle with dashboards is you want them to be really intuitive and simple and like when someone lands on the page, they should know what to do immediately. And I really like this approach because it takes that, systems level way of viewing the ecosystem and lets the user sort of pick what they want to look at individually, just in a very intuitive approach. Have you found that, you know, the response you've gotten to these types of approaches for visualizing and interacting with the data, are people like just totally jazzed about it? I mean, because I think it's really cool, but are you getting that from like your users as well?
So there's definitely a lot of excitement about these infographics. It's something that comes up at our MBON talks all the time. Everybody kind of thinks it's a good way to go and wants one. We haven't done any actual like user studies to check out, you know, what the public thinks of it, but in general, it's been very well received. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I'll. The original idea for it was founded because the Integrated Ecosystem Assessment Program had drawn up these conceptual models to help orient their readers to all the ecosystem elements, and then it gets kind of complicated when you talk about something like a marine heat wave and all the trophic cascade of, you know, environmental drivers and then going through the food web of downstream effects. And so Jen Brown, actually day one in 2017 when I started on this Marine Biodiversity Observation Network, or MBON project, she is more on the data side and had worked with the IEA program and the sanctuaries program that MBON was supporting, both in Monterey Bay and Florida Keys. And she said, hey, we've got this data, we've got these conceptual models with icons of different elements in the ecosystem. How could we combine the two? And that led to this proliferation of initially just a couple prototypes, and we made an R Markdown website, and everything was kind of like glommed in one single thing. And since then, we've teased things out, and we're still in process with the documentation to try to make it easier in any of these environments. As Tyler was saying, that it's all the tools are free. It's all using open source. It's a D3 based functionality or data-driven documents. Most of it's the core library that a lot of the interactive visualizations you see on the web are about. And the other thing is like I think there's a lot of development in the future that could be done, and we really welcome people getting involved. We want to do more of this data-driven storytelling, and then maybe in the future data-driven scrollytelling. You see this a lot when you go to some New York Times or Washington Post article. You scroll, people are used to consuming content with their smartphones. And if you can just scroll through and see different elements of an ecosystem lighting up in that conceptual model way, simultaneous to then like the trend of what they're doing, and then look at like maybe a dashed line of time and see how different events can cause these subsequent impacts, or at least be correlated to these subsequent impacts. That's communicating in a way that struck me as being not even requiring really even literacy. If you can do something in a visual way, up, down trends over time, people get that, and it can even, you know, they understand icons very quickly. You can do it in a way that is very quick to consume. So I think we'll see more of these things.
Yeah, that's very cool. You know, everybody has an infographic, or everybody has a conceptual diagram, but it's very rarely a data-driven conceptual diagram, and you guys have done just that, and I think it's really cool to see how this is played out in practice. So I look forward to seeing more on this.
Awesome. Yeah, I look forward to it.
Quick question.
Thanks.
Hey, this is Ed. I was curious, how are you guys embedding the standalone HTML and existing content management systems? Are you doing it just as an iframe, or is there other coding that you guys are working on?
Yeah, instead of an iframe, I mean, you can do it as an iframe, but because iframes can be kind of weird sometimes, there's just some HTML that you can stick in here. I think this is the right link. Yeah, so if you go to this marinebond.org/infographic.js, this goes over the basics of how to just put this infographic into any web page by injecting this HTML. So this is the dependency you need, and then the script you need to load, and the div that is used to grab onto. There's some more documentation here, but really that's everything you need. And you can see that's where this demo lives too. So this is the code for that demo right here. And you can also view it on GitHub. It's all built from here. There's demo.html. So that's the whole web page. And so you can just grab that HTML and stick it in anything that allows you to put HTML in there.
Very cool.
Yeah, what gets especially weird is when if you have an iframe and then you have that modal window as like sort of the pop-up content, it's always going to be restricted to whatever the extent of the iframe is, which on most like content management system web pages is fairly constrained outside the nav elements. So it just starts looking pretty funky and unsatisfying. But even with like most CMSs, you can just switch into HTML mode. And one of the nice things about this injection of this HTML, even though it's sourcing JavaScript and cascading style sheets, that it can live all within the body of the HTML. It doesn't need to go in the header.
So how are you keeping the evergreen within the content management system? Are you coring to those files somewhere?
The actual data doesn't live in the content management system. It's linked to from elsewhere. You can see here the CSV in this one is a Google Doc spreadsheet.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you change that spreadsheet and then it loads it next time you refresh the page and everything's up to date.
Nice.
And then the actual data that gets plotted inside the modal can be generated in all kinds of ways. So if you're used to using R, then maybe you would have like a GitHub action update that modal content. That can be any independent web page that gets loaded as the content into that modal. Or what we do with the Florida Keys infographic is actually use Google Charts to then hit the Google Sheet latest data and then display that because the data providers are most comfortable in Google Sheets since Noah's all on board with the Google Suite.
Cool, thanks.
We're 3 minutes past the end of our meeting time, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I guess Ben, Tyler, Sarah, if there are any other questions folks might have, I hope it's all right. I'm going to volunteer you guys as accepting questions via email. So I guess we can continue the conversation that way. Again, thank you all for sharing this really cool work today. One final announcement before we adjourn. Let me share my screen. Our next meeting is going to be August 3rd, and I am sort of half committing Mike McManus to be our presenter for next time. I'm obviously going to confirm that with you, Mike, but he's volunteered some other interesting topics that we could talk about next time. But as always, we are soliciting speakers for these meetings. So if you have any thoughts, ideas of cool talks that we think we could showcase here that really demonstrate how open science can be an effective tool for truly applied science, feel free to reach out and let us know. But with that, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks a bunch. Cheers.
Thank you.